of our economy is mixed. We are in a much better place than we thought we would be a year and a half ago. From a growth rate, negative growth rate of 9.5 in 2020, our economy accelerated to 7.6 in 2022 and 6.4 in the first quarter of the year, which is not bad compared to the other ASEAN countries around our region. What is good is that our credit rating is stable, primarily because of our macroeconomics fundamental, which is quite established in its over the last decade. The consumer spending, we can see it's on the rebound. For those who have time on the weekend to go to the malls, yesterday I had time to go to Bonifacio area, and I said even on a Monday night there was lots of activities. So it's on the rebound. As of 2022, we can see the highest contributor to our growth is travel and leisure. But the recovery of the pandemic is not completely over. And the road, as what Secretary Diokno has said, it's a high growth economy. It's going to be a high growth economy by 2025. Okay? But we can expect certain headwind as we go along. The inflation of 7.5 between January to May this year is a bit of concern. You know why. Our food price is still high. Okay? Oil prices has spiked due to the geopolitical situation in Europe, but lately has come down. So uncertainties on inflation, on high interest rates, definitely this would have some impact on our growth. The fiscal space the government had before the pandemic had narrowed, and it's tightening even further as government and banking authorities fight inflation, fiscal deficit, and public debt that was really impacted through by the pandemic. We were just talking earlier with the gentleman down there. We said many people are not aware that our debt, our government's debt, is high percentage local peso denominated. Of course, we have about 30% that's in a foreign currency. So that takes it sort of helps us in dealing with the servicing of the debt. Now, supporting development through business expansion and new investment. We at PCCI have taken the task of engaging government to provide a business environment that will not only make our company survive and thrive, but to make our country the destination of choice of foreign investors and tourists. As I mentioned earlier, Speaker Martin Romualdez was our guest speaker, and he mentioned that that he's happy that he sees me in many of the president's trip, whether it's a working trip or considered a state visit to other countries. And I've been privileged to join these trips, but I'm there really to promote our country, okay? In a way that I think we know we have vast potentials. Okay? The trying to attract in foreign investment, it's not just this present administration. Even the previous administration was doing it. And I always say that we have put ourselves in the radar. Foreign countries, European countries, Japan, and even China, they're all interested in coming over here in the last so many years. Earlier, we were just discussing about the U.S. and China, tariff tiff. We were expecting more to come to the Philippines. Unfortunately, many of the investments went to our neighboring countries. Okay? Now, we ask ourselves why? Why, although we are in the radar, why the planes were diverted to other countries? We have to be realistic. We need more runway lights for them to land in the Philippines. Okay? And you know very well, most of you are either in the media or business, this runway lights is something that we in the private sector I, in my capacity as a private representative of LEDAC, Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council, during the presentation of the by NEDA for the Philippine Development Plan for 2023 to 2028, and I did mention that we do have to, have our acts together in order really to attract foreign investments. I'll go down later on what are this concern. Well, it's here. We are concerned that government should give priority in streamlining business processes. Okay? We still find that there's a lot of bureaucracy, especially in the local government. Last week, we invited Secretary Ben-Hur, Secretary of Local Government, and Secretary Attorney Director General Nes Perez of ARTA. The reason why is that we have been, PCCI's member, our constituents, are mostly in the micro, small, and medium-sized company. They're not like, big companies when it comes to paperwork, when it comes to compliance. They have a department that takes care of that. These companies that are member of PCCI, normally, they're the one, doing all of these things, no? They're the ones that are getting their hands dirty. So we hear from them a lot that, hasn't improved much. Much talk about ease of doing business still has a lot that we hope that they would improve on. And during that presentation of the National Development Plan, there were local governments there. And I mentioned to them, I said, my take is that I meet foreign investors who would like to come to the Philippines. And almost all of them would tell me, I'd like to be located in PESA. Okay. Why? Well, because PESA is very well run for the last 20 years. The rule of law applies. There is no regulation inconsistency. And that's the impression people get. Of course, this started all the way back to De Lima, when this DNA was created in PESA. Of course, now we have a very capable Director General, Attorney Theo Panga. We have met him a couple of times. So I mentioned to the crowd, I said, I wish that the local government would adopt some of the DNA of PESA. We cannot grow, we cannot talk about sustainability, inclusiveness. If it's just concentrated, the growth is concentrated on the PESA. We need this growth throughout the country. And in order to do that, the local government should realize that they play that important role. Yeah? And so we know how far we are as far as attracting foreign investment. Some of the data that I was able to get that our country consistently lagged behind our ASEAN neighbors in the ease of doing business. Unfortunately, we place 95th out of 190 countries in 2021. So we are basically, if you divide 190, that's 95. So we are in the lower quadrant of this. So it doesn't bode well for us. In comparison, Singapore has always been on top, the top three. Malaysia is 12, Thailand is 21, Vietnam is 70, and Indonesia is 73. So we do have a lot to catch up. And that reflects also the foreign direct investments that we're getting. We're getting single-digit foreign investments, which is close to about 10 billion US dollars, while our ASEAN neighbors are getting a bigger share, usually between 15 to 20 billion dollars, except for Singapore. Singapore every year gets something like $100 billion of investments. So last week when we had the meeting, so we heard from Secretary Ben Hur that they will work closely with ARTA. Okay. Complaints from small businesses or whatever in the delays, they can either, local government can either take it up or they will endorse it for ARTA to take action. So that came out to be very positive. Of course, the pudding is we need evidential base to see that's happening. We were fortunate also to invite the new Secretary of Health, Secretary Ted Herbosa. Again, when I got to talk to Secretary Ted Herbosa, he's very much open in adopting more, well, I think in the paper it came out, more open policy. Because for a while, the policy was still a bit of all of those, I mean, we had the DNA of all of those, it almost ended like barbecue. We had MCQ, GCQ, all of those Qs that held us during the time of 2020 and 2021. So I think Secretary Ted Herbosa is more open that our country is moving forward, but they have also the responsibility to make sure that all the health protocol that's needed to prevent such an occurrence, or if there are, we can catch it early to avoid the spread of something of a pandemic nature of such scale. The infrastructure build-up, of course, we know that the president continue, instead of the build better, more, which is the initial of the president, BBM. So build better, more. And I can see that we are seeing some of the improvement. I would like to take it that for me to travel from Manila Hotel to Ascot Hotel in 30 minutes, maybe that's a reflection that some of this Skyway has helped eliminate some of this traffic. So the president or the administration has 1 year managing the country. Many times I was asked, how do I rate the president? I said it's too early. But what I can say is that the president has worked very hard in promoting the country. The number of trips he did all over the world, Cambodia, Thailand, US twice, Brussels, Davos, even China at the height of their strict quarantine protocol. I was one of the entourage of the trip of President to China. Well, that was in January. Just to share with you, we had going and coming back, we had 6 tests. Okay, we had 3 PCR tests and 3 rapid antigen tests. So that was at that time when they strictly imposed this very strict protocol. But again, I mean, many our local businessmen were there to convince some companies from China to invest. So the infrastructure of this administration, I think, will continue to propel our growth, roads, port, bridges, and more importantly, the connectivity. The Secretary of DOST is Attorney Ivan Wee, and he used to be a core sec of PCCI, so I know him very well. I said, you know, you have a heavy weight on your shoulder, and I think that you should fast track the improvement of our connectivity, because this is the only way when our countrymen can see the benefit. Very often we talk about 6.5% growth of our country. Maybe people like you can understand, but the people, the marginalized people, they can't understand unless they feel it. So connectivity is very important for them to feel that the government is doing something for them. Okay, aside from connectivity, mobility is also important. Just to share one of the observations that the government realized that they owe it to our people, our citizens, especially for the OFW. We have so many people working abroad. One of the congresswomen who attended the National Conference of Employers is Maricar Del Mar. She is the party list of the OFW. So I was asking her, how many OFW do we have? Well, he said, probably on the lower skill, okay, probably we have about 2 million. Okay, caretaker. I wouldn't say lower skill, no, but for all of you who have traveled to Hong Kong, Singapore, to Middle East, Dubai, we have a lot of our fellow Filipinos working there. And you know what? In those countries, they experience world standard connectivity. They experience world standard mobility. Okay? And that is why it's sad that when they come back, our connectivity as far as broadband still has a lot to be desired. Okay? Our mobility, same thing with our MRT, so on and so forth. We still encounter a lot of stoppage. And of course, not to mention power. So these are all issues I think the government is well aware of. And quite often, when there's a forum, I would speak on their behalf. I would say, I think we owe it to them. They are the one who brought dollars for us. Our economy is basically a consumer-driven economy, of which we receive 38 billion, maybe for the year, $40 billion. And I think that all of the infrastructure that I mentioned would definitely benefit those who somehow has a role in making our economy afloat. Yeah. So infrastructure is important. But aside from the infrastructure, the PCCI has the advocacy of reach out, REACH. Now, every letter has a meaning. The first R is to reinvigorate our resource-based sector. That translates to we should have more oil exploration. We should really maximize the mineral reserve that we have. Of course, I'm talking about responsible mining. We should have forestry. We should have salt harvesting. By the way, we import 93%, if I'm not mistaken, of our salt. Okay? Because of some laws that needs to be tweaked. So these are what we're pushing for. And the rest of the four letters, I think it's very obvious. E would be something that that we all know that needs to be improved: energy and education. That stands for E. A, agriculture and aquaculture. And C is connectivity and dealing with climate change. Okay. And H, I had a hard time thinking of what H should be applied in the reach. Okay, I think I finally ended up with human dignity. Okay. So that's the key word for PCCI, our advocacy, reach. Okay, so out is one united in transformation. N, I put an N to that, is transparency, of which people in the media, they're always looking for that transparency, to know exactly what's happening, some of the issues that we're encountering. So I think I touched more or less on what I've shared. I just like to touch on the one of our advocacy, as I said, is agriculture. You know, the president was very firm in pushing for the condonation of the loan, agri-loan, and that amounts to about almost 60 billion pesos. Okay? The other day we had Senator Cynthia Villar, who is in charge of the agriculture, to meet with us, and we discussed that agriculture should be really given focus. We have 115 million in population, and that's a big market. We know very well, sad to say, that we import a lot of our agri-products. And the Senator Villar was well aware of that, and she mentioned that the expiration of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law should already allow expansion of land ownership beyond the 5 hectare. Okay. So that's always in our, I think all of us, I mean, when we think about the agrarian laws, that it limits the area that is allowed to be tilled. According to Senator Cynthia Villar, that law has lapsed. So I hope that people are aware of this, and will try to, look into agri-sector as an investment sector. Other countries are very open about having foreign investors in the agri-sectors, and we hope that our government would be flexible enough to allow that. Now, moving forward, very often in forum, we talk about the 4th Industrial Revolution, innovations, which is the key word for us to leapfrog our economic situation. Now, we can see models: Singapore, in the ASEAN region, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam. Just for information, among the ASEAN countries, Vietnam is now manufacturing their own EV car. Okay? So you can see they're that advanced. While we have the source of the mineral such as nickel, and that is something that when I was with the president abroad, people would approach me that they're interested in refining our ore for nickel that can be used in the battery. So those are positive signs that people are really interested in our country. Again, we are as often said, we are in the demographic sweet spot, wherein our population is young, average, compared to European countries. European countries are mostly in their maybe early 40s, or Japan is really an aging society. We are 25. Okay? And just to share with you, this year, our Philippine Business Conference, to be held in October, the theme is Philippine Vision 2050. How many years is that away from today? 2050 and 2023? 27 years, di ba? I hope we're still around, no? But just to share with you, I did a research on what would be the average age for our country by 2050. You want to take a guess? What's our average age at 2050? We're just about 31, with a population of 145 to 148 million. We're just about 31. So you can see that this 2 decades really present to us a lot of potential. They are not only the productive force in our country, but they are also the consumer. So this is a message that I'd like to share, that we have this opportunity. We have the highest growth in the numbers, but we do have the manpower. I go all over the world, and I find our compatriot working in very high position. Okay? As a matter of fact, the new central bank governor has worked in the U.S., in the New York Federal Reserve. So these are all really upside that Filipinos engineers, architects, software programmer are well known. So we really have to capitalize on that. Training, of course, is something that we advocate. We advocate the TechVoc, the technical vocational, and we work closely with the German government in some of the projects wherein we think TechVoc is very important. We would like that our workers not only needs the upskilling, but really needs some new sets of skills. Often we hear visitors coming here that they want to invest, but there's a mismatch on the skill sets. So it has been one of our projects to encourage the government to incentivize the training of our young people to certain skill sets so that they can be gainfully employed. In related to that, we work closely with DOST. We just met with Secretary Renato Solido. We had our brainstorming projects that would help MSME adopt technologies and automate and how to improve their productivity, especially in the agricultural. One of the problems that we have is low productivity in agricultural. The data last year just shows that our agricultural sector improved by 1.3%. That's hardly enough to make up for the birth rate of the country. So it's something that all the government agencies are aware of, and DOST has been tasked to do soil mapping, also the irrigation side of things, the water table, and I hope all of those data will be put to good use so that we can, where agri-sector is moving into the high-tech. So the number of things I mentioned, these are all key areas for us to become a high growth economy. Our visions and programs from the national to the local levels and the government and the labor sectors, we have to be synchronized. We'll have to be synchronized. Under the leadership of President Marcos Jr., we have many opportunities to align our economic programs with our social and development goals to build on the potentials of our natural resources and economic assets. We must move as one with urgency. I often shared my thoughts with my friends in business. I said, our ASEAN neighbors are not standing still. We talk about we're trying to improve. They may be improving even on a faster pace. So we need to work in sync. The urgency of it, we need to have creativity and courage so that we will not miss our chance to grow to a middle income level by 2040. So with that, these are my thoughts that I'd like to share from the business point of view. Maraming salamat po. Thank you.
President, may we invite you to please remain on stage?
Okay, good.
We invite our Chairman and CEO and our President and COO to present to you some tokens of our appreciation.
That's very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
For
much.
always
Oh, wow.
For you?
Wow.
make cakes very
Yeah. No, it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the wealth of knowledge of the PCCI with us. Thank you.
Please hi, sir.
So we shall now proceed with our fifth speaker. Our fifth speaker has done graduate studies in applied economics at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and in development economics at UP Diliman. He also earned his doctorate degree in economics at the University of Illinois. Prior to his current assignment, he has served as the principal researcher at the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. In his current role, he serves as principal economist. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Department of Budget and Management, or DBM, Undersecretary for Budget Policy and Strategy, Joselito Basilio. Undersecretary, the stage is yours.
Thank you. To our friends at the Manila Times, led by Chairman and CEO Dante Cliang, to the organizers, officials, and men and women of Manila Times, ladies and gentlemen, good day to all of you. On behalf of Budget Secretary Amena F. Pangandaman, thank you for the privilege of addressing the Manila Times Midyear Economic Forum, whose witty title, The Financial Play After the Halftime Replay, paints a scenario of actionable plans of the government to boost the economy and steer the Philippines to progress and prosperity. The DBM's role in managing the country's financial health is to formulate and implement the national budget, one that supports the national socio-economic plans and objectives, that ensures the efficient and sound use of government funds and revenues. As a member of the Philippine Economic Team, the DBM, led by Secretary Pangandaman, is responsible for overseeing the country's priority expenditures. At the DBM, it is always our goal to ensure alignment of fiscal policy with the pursuit of the Philippines' post-pandemic economic transformation, giving emphasis on inclusivity and sustainability. The country's priority expenditures are thus aligned with the 8-point socio-economic agenda for prosperity and the Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028 of the administration of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. The good news is the Philippines is on track, and its agenda for prosperity, notwithstanding the difficult global challenges of economic recovery after 3 years of the pandemic. In the first quarter of 2023, the Philippine economy expanded by 6.4%. But please take note that when the Marcos Jr. administration began serving its term, from the third quarter of 2022 to the first quarter of 2023, the country's growth on average was actually 7.1%. This means that in the span of only 3 quarters, the Philippines became one of the best performing economies in East Asia. Meanwhile, here's a summary of the fiscal year 2023 General Appropriations Act, which shows the national budget of the Philippines at around 5.268 trillion, equivalent to 21.9% of GDP. A big chunk, or 38.1%, has been allotted to social services to achieve the targets of revitalized education, quality health care, and strengthened social protection for Filipinos. Education, as mandated by the Philippine Constitution, is top priority, with about 17%, or 896.08 billion of the total national budget. The health sector has been given one of the biggest increases in the budget at 320.89 billion pesos. In light of lessons from the pandemic, as well as the President's mandate to expand access to affordable healthcare even to the farthest regions. Social protection takes 11.7% of the budget pie, or 616.79 billion pesos, to benefit the poorest of the poor. The budget for agriculture, a crucial sector, a driving force for economic growth and main source of food security, has been increased to 186.44 billion, or 29% higher than the previous years. The aim is to improve agricultural productivity and reestablish the Philippines as a top exporter of agricultural products. Spending for infrastructure, the backbone of the economy, is at 1.33 trillion pesos, or 25.3% of the national budget, equivalent to 5.5% of GDP. Majority of the infrastructure budget aims to improve physical connectivity throughout the country via the construction of accessible road networks, 478 billion, railways, 40 billion, buildings, 48.1 billion, and flood control infrastructures, 283 billion pesos, among others. A considerable amount has likewise been allotted to social infrastructure development, which includes the construction of school buildings, hospitals and health centers, water and power supply systems, as well as housing and community facilities. Funding for irrigation systems is at 30.1 billion pesos and reforestation projects at 1.2 billion pesos. The budget for digital infrastructure, the foundation of business connectivity, is pegged at 24.13 billion pesos. Key factors to maintain economic growth is climate change adaptation and mitigation measures, whose total budget for 2023 is at 464.5 billion pesos, or about 60% more than last year's. These include investments in water sufficiency and renewable energy infrastructure, as well as alternative resources. To promote genuine inclusive growth, local government units, or LGUs, are getting 820.3 billion pesos as part of their national tax allotment. This is on top of the local government support fund of around 16.5 billion pesos. Support to Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, whose government undergoes transition until 2025, amounts to 74.35 billion pesos. This includes allocations for its annual block grant, a special development fund for the rebuilding, rehabilitation, and development of its conflict-affected communities, and the region's share in taxes, fees, and charges. As the DBM has emphasized, the national budget for fiscal year 2024, which would be next year, will prioritize shovel-ready infrastructure projects, investments in human capital development, and sustainable agriculture and food security, among others, for the continuity and sustainability of gains from the 2023 priority programs. As for our own programs, which includes implementing full digitalization in fiscal management for a green economy and a more efficient and lean bureaucracy, the DBM has been working on several structural reforms. First among these reforms, under the leadership of Secretary Pangandaman, is the full adoption of the Integrated Financial Management Information System, or IFMIS, for the government in government agencies, where the President recently mandated when he signed Executive Order number 29. This follows Executive Order number 170 issued in 2022, which directed the adoption of digital payments for government disbursements and collections. Second, the DBM likewise looks forward to the approval of the Progressive Budgeting for Better and Modernized Governance Bill, which aims to institutionalize public financial management reforms, such as the cash budgeting system. Third is the National Government Right-Sizing Program, which is intended to minimize and eliminate overlaps and duplication of functions among the government workforce, reduce costs, processing time, and other regulatory requirements in government transactions. Fourth is the Green Public Procurement Roadmap, in which the government will buy common use supplies and equipment items only with eco-friendly specifications. Perhaps an important thing among the executive and legislative branches initiatives to boost economic development is the passing of the Maharlika Investment Fund Act, which is expected to be signed and then launched before year-end. Now, for more good news, the World Bank has declared that the Philippines will achieve above middle income status in the next 2 years. Fitch Ratings, meanwhile, has raised its outlook for the Philippines to stable. And the S&P Global Market Intelligence forecasts that the Philippines may yet become a $1 trillion economy by 2033. Following the country's 7.6% GDP growth in 2022, its real GDP growth is projected to be the highest in the ASEAN region for 2023. To quote World Bank Country Director Benjamin Diokno at the Philippine Economic Briefing in Washington, D.C. last April, the Philippine formula is interconnected structural reforms plus prudent macro-fiscal and financial management reforms. In simpler terms, this means the entire cabinet and PBBM plus the whole of government approach plus the private sector and the whole of economy approach equals 7.6% GDP. So in a nutshell, that's our game plan or our financial play, if you will. On behalf of the DBM and Secretary Pangandaman, thank you very much for this opportunity to present the country's bright economic outlook as the administration of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. enters its second year. Maraming salamat at mabuhay.
Thank you, Undersecretary Basilio, for giving us the game plan of the DBM. We will invite you later on for the final fireside chat after our next talk. Now, our sixth and final speaker was the former Budget Secretary on 2 separate terms, and as well as former DBM Undersecretary for Budget Operations. Some of you might also know that he has also been the ex-officio chairman of the Anti-Money Laundering Council.
Fellow cabinet secretaries, friends in the media and business.
So, prior to his current position, he was a former BSP governor. Now, let us listen to the video presentation of Department of Finance or DOF Secretary Benjamin Diokno.
Fellow cabinet secretaries, friends in the media and business community, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good day to you all. I thank the Manila Times for mounting this mid-year forum and giving us an opportunity to share the Philippine government's fiscal game plan to bring the country back to its high growth trajectory. For the first quarter of the year, the Philippine economy sustained its growth momentum and performed remarkably well despite the lingering instability in the global economy. At 6.4%, we managed to outpace major emerging economies in Asia, such as India, Malaysia, Indonesia, China, Vietnam, and Thailand. The robust expansion was broad-based, with all major production sectors registering positive growth, led by services, followed by industry, then agriculture. For the rest of the year, the Development Budget Coordination Committee is eyeing a 6 to 7% full-year expansion. we're confident that growth will quicken to 6.5 to 8% from next year until 2028. The recent growth projections, upgrades by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, suggest that these lofty targets are doable. Still, the growth outlook remains subject to downside risk. The government remains on top of the country's inflation situation and the lingering economic scars from the pandemic. Inflation is on a continuous decline, slowing for the fourth consecutive month in May to settle at 6.1%. As a result, the average inflation assumption for 2023 has been narrowed to 5 to 6% from the previous assumption range of 5 to 7%. While the year-to-date average remains elevated at 7.5%, we expect the inflation rate to return to the target range of 2 to 4% by the fourth quarter of 2023 and all throughout 2024 to 2028. The government, through the Interagency Committee on Inflation and Market Outlook, will continue to take a proactive, science-based approach to addressing the primary drivers of inflation. Together with the monetary policy actions of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, this will help ensure a return to the inflation target over the policy horizon. Now we have also made meaningful gains in our employment situation. With the continued reopening of the economy, the labor market continues to show improvements across key metrics. In April of this year, the unemployment rate dropped to 4.5% from 5.7% in the same period last year. Underemployment has also gone down to 12.9% in April versus the 14% registered a year ago. Year on year, more workers are joining the labor force. Labor force participation rate rose to 65.1% in April from 63.4% recorded in April last year. Revenue collection for the first 5 months of the year improved to 1.6 trillion pesos, up by 10.8% compared to the same period last year. The increase is due to higher economic activity, timely implementation of tax reforms, and improved tax administration through digitalization. A healthy level of revenues is a necessary condition to achieving our headline targets as identified in the medium-term fiscal framework. As of the first quarter of 2023, the debt-to-GDP ratio stood at 61%, down from 63.5% in the first quarter of 2022. By 2025, we aim to reduce this to less than 60%, then further down to 51% by 2028. In the first quarter of this year, the deficit-to-GDP ratio was at 4.8%, down from 6.4% in the first quarter of 2022. By 2028, the goal is to cut the budget deficit to 3% of GDP. To ensure that growth outpaces debt, productive spending will be of paramount importance. Hence, infrastructure spending must be kept at 5 to 6% of GDP annually until 2028. On the back of the previous administration's infrastructure momentum, the Ferdinand Marcos Jr. administration is determined to address the country's infrastructure backlog to facilitate high-value investments and generate more quality and green jobs. Recently, the National Economic and Development Authority released the Public Investment Program 2023 to 2028. This contains 3,770 infrastructure priority programs and projects with an indicative investment requirement of 17 1.3 trillion pesos. Target sectors include transportation, agriculture, energy, digital connectivity, and water infrastructure, among others. These sectors are also identified in the infrastructure flagship projects list approved by the NEDA board. To fulfill the massive financing requirement of these big-ticket item projects, designing and adopting a sound and effective public-private partnership framework will be crucial. Recognizing this, the government has immediately made major enhancements in the PPP ecosystem in the country. First, we revised implementing rules and regulations of the Build, Operate, Transfer law to clarify provisions and address stakeholder concerns on the financial viability and bankability of PPP projects. Second, we improved the Investment Coordination Committee guidelines on public-private partnership approvals. Third, we enhanced the NEDA joint venture guidelines to complement these advancements. And finally, we are pushing for the congressional approval of the Public-Private Partnership Act, which is now making significant progress in the Senate. We're optimistic that the bill will be approved within the second half of the year. We can also look forward to enjoying the full impact of the implementation of our economic liberalization bills. Together, these measures will usher in a new age of investments for the Philippines, one that will support our transition into a modern, sustainable, and digitally driven economy. It has been a productive first half of the season, and we are certainly prepared to play the long game. But it takes team effort to finish strong. On behalf of the economic team, I call on our partners in the private sector to join us in building better and building more. I'm confident that with your support, we'll be able to run even faster and go further than ever before. Thank you.
For his presentation, but we'd also like to acknowledge the presence of Undersecretary Abinoha. We'd like to welcome you on stage, please, in order to move forward with our fireside chat, wherein we'd like to raise some questions about the presentation that was just shared with us. And also, we'd like to welcome back Undersecretary Basilio on stage. Our Manila Times columnist, Ben Kritz, will now be asking you some questions.
Well, it's been a very interesting day. And yes, I do have a few questions. And I'll start with you, since we went all this time today, and you were the first person to bring up the Maharlika Investment Fund, which that tends to be a little polarizing, I think. I have two questions, okay? And I realize that you have a certain perspective from the DBM, which may differ somewhat from DOF or from BSP or anyone else. But what do you see it being used best for? That's the first question. And the second question is, how would you assess the safeguards that are attached to it? And I can give a specific example, but I'll let you answer the first question first.
I will start the discussion. Asik June here can also make comments on Maharlika. Is part of the one who's framing the IRR.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully if it gets passed. So yeah, for the question on Maharlika investment fund, on the part of the DBM or on the fiscal or expenditure policy side, the hope is of course that Maharlika will be one of those that will take up some of the projects of the government that will then unburden the national annual budget. So in that way, we'll have more funds for other priority projects if in case Maharlika grows enough, big enough so that it can unburden the government of some of these projects. So that's one key thing that we are looking at. So
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ben. First, on the context why we thought of, or at least the economic managers thought of the Maharlika Investment Fund. It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle for, like, it's a crowdsourcing vehicle for everyone to invest in. Second, we wanted to at least eliminate some of the bureaucracies we understand that a PPP project encounters, probably. Of course, as everybody knows, or not everybody will know, that all maybe infrastructure projects goes through the ICC process. From at least 3 levels are there for a project to be approved by the president, all the way up to the president. So the Maharlika Investment Funds or Maharlika Investment Fund is a vehicle for investments outside of those structures.
Well, see, I think that is exactly the thing that makes people nervous about it. For example, how do you safeguard against a situation where investment is going to, say, a very well politically connected politician? I'm not going to, I have a name in mind, but I'm not going to say it. You know, I mean, it looks like a vehicle for siphoning away government resources to favored enterprises and people. And how do you ensure that does not happen?
I think everybody's familiar of that name, but I will not mention it right now. It's from another country. As we were deliberating in Congress this bill, I was part of that discussion. I think in this bill we made it conscious that there are at least 7 safeguards in the bill that the other sovereign wealth funds or the recently in the news got folded up. And then I think as I was part of the team explaining to the House of Representatives, just like in any other tool, it's subject to misuse. And we made it sure that it's not subject to abuse by placing 7 safeguards. What I meant was, I used this analogy, perhaps millennials could understand. Facebook was conceptualized to interconnect people, but the same medium was used to bash everybody. So Facebook used or instituted some safeguards to protect the tool from misuse. So like Facebook and probably the invention of gunpowder, where gunpowder was invented to protect people, but unscrupulous individuals use the same tool to oppress. So just like in the Maharlika Investment Fund, we were conscious of this tool being misused or misused by some individuals. So like I said, there are 7 safeguards to protect the funds from these kinds of misincentives.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there for now. You brought up something else that I personally found curious. You mentioned the government's right-sizing program. And when the Marcos administration started, this, of course, was a big subject of conversation for a short period of time, not long. I'm wondering, how is that going? Where does it stand now? Is there any way that you could quantify that?
Currently, the House has already submitted or passed it, the bill, and then it's now with the Senate. And right now, these are being deliberated at the committee level, and there are several sponsors already, at least more than 3 or 5 in the House and 3 in the Senate. So realizing that legislators themselves realize the need for such right-sizing program. There was a figure a few years back, or less, around 1 year ago, on how much the net savings would be. So we're trying to recalculate at this point. It can be around 10 to 20 billion per year. And of course, right sizing also could mean additional personnel for digital transformation, but at the same time, of course, removing old functions and removing overlaps and duplications. So there are costs to it, and there are, of course, net savings to be had.
Apart from the bill that's pending in Congress, what are you able to do or to help other government departments coordinate to do, while we're waiting for the bill? I mean, surely there is some, there's some dead weight that can be cut without the need for legislation.
So the DBM, on its part, has started studying the different sectors, meaning government agencies per sector, because that's the best way to look at them. For example, the water sector, and then education sector, and others. So what the DBM has done is to take on have consultants study the different sectors of government bureaucracy, and there are already studies, and now there are ongoing ones, which in which case we have someone from ADB providing technical assistance also, in order to make sure that the right sizing is done in a way that it's really progressive and modernizing the bureaucracy. So so the DBM is getting ready, so that once the bill is passed into law, we will have at most 3 years, 3 years to make such right sizing, because that's the one in the 3 years, the timeline that is in the bill.
Okay. Did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Just wanted to add, at least administratively within the Department of Finance, I think within the economic managers, there's have been instruction to at least right-size the bureaucracy within our own powers. And in fact, at the Department of Finance, 2 affiliated or agencies have been folded up because of redundancy in function. So right now, also in our own capacity at the Department of Finance, we're right-sizing already, even without the bill.
Okay, well, that's good. All right, I think we have time for just one more question, and I'm not sure if everybody is aware of exactly what it is, but could you explain what the PPP Act will do? What changes will that make?
I think the PPP bill is now pending in the Senate also. Most of these are from lessons of the past 10 or 20 years where we have had PPPs. And the intention, of course, is to make sure that the processes are faster this time with respect to the processing of the public-private partnership. And then there are also, of course, issues like defining solicited and unsolicited proposals and the difference between them. And then there's also possible LGU, encouraging LGUs
Right.
to also participate in such kind of partnership so that they themselves can
How about dispute resolution?
and dispute resolution.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So that's also one of those.
And if I may add again, Mr. Ben, I think what aligning it with the Public Service Act, if everybody would notice, in the Public Service Act, we actually redefined what is public utilities. So in our Constitution, I think foreign ownership is limited. But so by definition, in the Constitution, it did not define what an infrastructure is. But in the PPP, we made a sort of definition that does not include telecoms and information technology as infrastructure.
Why not?
Because it's now, if not now, you can see Starlink, like Elon Musk can invest in digital technologies because we excluded those those two areas as outside infrastructure as defined in the Constitution. It's now the Public Service Act has become more lenient in its definition. So the foreign ownership is somewhat relaxed.
Okay. All right. I think that's about it for this afternoon. I'd like to thank you gentlemen for your presentations and our little discussion here, and of course our speakers from earlier, DeFort.
Yeah, thank you very much, Undersecretary Zeno Ronald Abenoja, and of course, Undersecretary Joselito Basilio for representing the DOF and DBM respectively. May we ask you to remain on stage as our President and CEO will give you some tokens of our appreciation. And thank you also, Ben, for grace under pressure and handling the very impassioned discussions today. The Manila Times thanks you for being speakers and giving the game plan for the rest of the year for our fiscal growth. Thank you very much. And thank you also to everyone for attending up until the end and staying with us with the energy and the enthusiasm for us to be able to determine the financial play after the halftime replay. Thank you very much and have a great day ahead.
Sign up for a year for only 80 pesos per month. Visit tmt.ph/premium to get your free 30 days of the Manila Times Premium.
Mega World Hotels and Resorts is the largest hospitality chain in the Philippines. Each of its 6 diverse brands offer a distinct personality to cater to the needs of today's savvy traveler, whatever their purpose for travel may be. With a promise of enriching the travel experiences of its guests, Mega World Hotels and Resorts celebrates a unique culture of service excellence, fueled by warm and heartfelt service that Filipinos are best known for. Committed to providing every guest with unparalleled hospitality, the brand continues to innovate, curating meaningful experiences, building relationships, and inspiring travels while offering you the joys of being home. Mega World Hotels and Resorts. Our heart, your home.
What's more important for you? Completing your to-do list or your shopping list?
Yes! Finally!
Wow naman! Getting all the likes? Or what you actually like? Whoa! You the man!
I know, right?
Is it making sure everything goes according to plan?
That's the plan.
Boom! Sold! Or is the plan not to have one?
Bahala na.
Is it more important to live the life you've always wanted? Sarap naman. Or to just live in the moment?
Deserve.
Whatever your choice is, know that it's important for us too. Because at Maybank, we'll help you achieve it however you want to. Because we're a regional bank that knows exactly what you need. And that is to help bring you closer to what truly matters for you.
Paano nga ba magmahal? Pwedeng palarigalo. Pwedeng tumutula. pwedeng nanunuyo. Pero ako, paglilingkuran kita tulad ng pag-ibig. Iba ang lingkod pag-ibig. Tanggap ang lahat. Walang judgment. Pinahahalagahan ka. Maalaga din. Just like me. Laging handa. Honest. Walang tinatago. At walang kwento o tanong na palalampasin. Oh, di ba? Parehong-pareho. Ganyan ang lingkod pag-ibig. Paano nga ba magmahal? Pag-ibig, naglilingkod ng tapat at totoo.
Over 250 million young people are not in education, employment, or training. But how you start in life shouldn't determine what you do in the future. In the last 3 years, Future Makers by Standard Chartered has supported more than 650,000 talented young people from low-income communities, transforming lives by empowering them to learn, earn, and grow. Because where others see problems, we see potential. We're Standard Chartered, and we're here for good.